If you kiss me first, you lose. That's what she told him. Her blue-gray eyes locked onto his with the kind of challenge that destroys empires. He was a soldier, a second-in-command who'd spent 7 years building his reputation on discipline and control. But Lisa Palmer wasn't a mission. She was a catastrophe dressed in a black and red cocktail dress, and the game she proposed in that club wasn't just dangerous, it was suicide. The boss had sent him to protect her, to be her shadow for one night while he handled business uptown. Instead, Rocco Santoro found himself standing on a dance floor at midnight, inches away from the one woman in New York City he absolutely could not touch. Vincent Carlino, the most dangerous mafia boss in Manhattan, didn't share what was his, and Lisa belonged to him. Body, soul, and every breath in between. The game had rules. Simple rules. Deadly rules. And Rocco was already losing. 12 hours earlier, Rocco had been standing in Vincent's marble-floored penthouse on 432 Park Avenue, wondering why the old man looked more dangerous when he smiled. The boss poured 2 glasses of whiskey, expensive stuff that Rocco never touched because gifts from Vincent Carlino always came with strings attached. "I need you tonight, kid." Rocco kept his face neutral, professional. In 7 years with the family, he'd learned that the calm requests were the ones that got you killed. "What do you need?" "My girl." Vincent lit a cigar, his ruby ring catching the overhead light. "Lisa's going out tonight. Dinner, maybe a club. She thinks she can handle herself." He exhaled smoke slowly. "Make sure nothing happens to her." It sounded simple. Babysitting duty. Rocco had done worse jobs for less reason. "You want me to drive her?" "I want you to disappear into the background." Vincent's black eyes locked onto him with the weight of a man who owned half of Manhattan through blood and fear. "She doesn't need to know you're there. Just watch, make sure no one touches her." The way he said touches made Rocco's stomach tighten. Vincent Carlino didn't share. He possessed. Understood. Rocco drained the whiskey even though he'd told himself he wouldn't. The burn in his throat was nothing compared to the instinct screaming at him to say no. "But you didn't say no to Vincent. Not if you wanted to wake up tomorrow." "Good." Vincent stood, adjusting his 3-piece suit with the precision of a man who controlled everything in his world. "She's leaving at 7:15. Black and red dress. You'll know her when you see her." Rocco was already at the door when Vincent's voice stopped him cold. "Rocco." He turned. The boss was staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at Central Park 45 stories below, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. "She's mine. Remember that." 7 words that should have been a warning. 7 words that echoed in Rocco's head as he drove his black Dodge Charger toward the underground garage. 7 words that meant absolutely nothing the moment Lisa Palmer stepped out of the elevator and looked at him like he was the first real thing she'd seen in years. Lisa Palmer stepped out of the penthouse's west wing at exactly 7:15, and Rocco understood immediately why Vincent kept her locked away like a museum piece. She moved with the grace of someone who'd trained in ballet as a child, every step deliberate and fluid despite the 4-inch heels. The black and red cocktail dress hugged her frame like it had been designed specifically to destroy men's self-control, elegant and lethal in equal measure. But it was her eyes that stopped him, blue-gray, intense, carrying the weight of someone who'd learned to smile from inside a prison. She saw him immediately, standing by his black Dodge Charger in the building's underground garage, and something flickered across her face. Recognition, not of him, but of what he represented. Another one of Vincent's dogs on a leash. "You're the shadow tonight." Her voice was Manhattan-polished, educated, with an edge of dark sarcasm that told Rocco she'd been through this before. She didn't wait for him to open the door. She slid into the passenger seat like she owned the car, bringing with her the unmistakable scent of Coco Chanel. Number 5. Expensive. Classic. Suffocating. Rocco got behind the wheel without a word, his leather jacket creaking as he adjusted the rearview mirror. The engine rumbled to life with the kind of power that usually made him feel in control. Tonight, with Lisa Palmer 6 inches away from him, the Charger felt like a cage. "Where to?" His voice came out rougher than intended. Professional distance. That's what he needed. She was Vincent's. Vincent's woman. Vincent's property. Vincent's problem. "Lucia," she said it, like she was testing him, watching to see if he'd recognize the name. He did. Upper East Side Italian, fine dining, Michelin star, discreet entrance, the kind of place where Vincent owned the property through 3 shell corporations and used the back room for meetings that never made it into police reports. The drive took 12 minutes through Manhattan traffic, and Lisa didn't speak once. She stared out the window at the city lights like a prisoner memorizing the outside world. Rocco found himself watching her in his peripheral vision, the way her fingers played with the diamond collar around her throat, the unconscious tell of someone who wore jewelry like chains. He'd seen that gesture before in other women Vincent cared for. When they arrived at Lucia, Rocco expected her to disappear inside and leave him waiting in the car like a good dog. Instead, she turned to him with those devastating eyes and said, "You're coming in." It wasn't a question. Rocco's hand instinctively went to his watch, the steel timepiece his godfather gave him, touching it like a talisman against bad decisions. Boss said to stay invisible. The boss isn't here. Lisa's smile was sad and sharp simultaneously. And I don't eat alone anymore. That's one of his rules. She stepped out of the car before he could argue, leaving the door open and the scent of her perfume hanging in the air like a challenge. Inside Lucia, the maitre d' recognized her immediately and led them to a private table in the back corner, away from the other diners. The brick walls were exposed, painted deep red, and candles flickered on dark wood, creating shadows that moved like living things. Rocco removed his leather jacket, revealing his gray-fitted t-shirt and the black rose tattoo visible on his right forearm. Lisa noticed. She noticed everything. "How long have you worked for Vincent?" She asked it casually, studying the wine list like the answer didn't matter. But her fingers were tight around the menu, knuckles white. 7 years. Rocco sat across from her, hyper-aware that every word between them could be reported back. Vincent had eyes everywhere. This restaurant was his territory. 7 years. Lisa finally looked up from the menu, and there was something dangerous in her expression. "That's longer than most of his men last. You must be good at following orders." "I'm good at staying alive." The words came out harsher than he intended, and he saw her flinch slightly. Not from fear, from recognition. She understood survival. The waiter appeared, took their orders, disappeared again like a ghost. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation from the other tables, but at their corner the silence stretched heavy and loaded. Lisa took a sip of wine, expensive red that Vincent probably selected, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer, vulnerable. "Do you ever wonder what it's like?" She wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at the candle flame like it held answers. To just walk away. To make a choice that's yours. Not because someone ordered you. Not because you're afraid. Just because you want to. Rocco should have given her the company line. Should have reminded her that choices had consequences. That freedom was a luxury neither of them could afford. Instead, he found himself answering honestly for the first time in years. Every single day, the admission hung between them like a confession in church. Lisa's eyes lifted to meet his, and for a moment, just a moment, Rocco forgot that Vincent Carlino existed. Forgot the 7 years of loyalty, the blood on his hands, the black rose tattoo that marked him as family property. "My name's Lisa." She said it like it mattered. Like in this restaurant, at this table, with candles casting shadows across her face, they could pretend to be two ordinary people having dinner. Not the boss's girl. Not Vincent's woman. Just Lisa. Rocco. He didn't offer his last name. Didn't need to. In their world, first names were intimacy enough. She smiled, then a real smile. Not the sad imitation she'd worn in the car. And Rocco felt something shift in his chest. Something dangerous. Something that felt suspiciously like the beginning of the end. The food arrived and they ate in a silence that somehow felt comfortable. Dangerous, like two people dancing on the edge of a cliff and pretending the fall didn't exist. Lisa asked questions that had nothing to do with the family, where he grew up, what he liked, if he'd ever been anywhere besides New York. Rocco answered carefully at first, then less carefully, then not carefully at all. She had a way of listening that made him forget he was supposed to be invisible. "Queens," he found himself saying, pouring more wine into her glass without thinking. "Grew up in a neighborhood where you either joined a family or got crushed by one." His hand absently touched the scar on his jaw, a thin line that cut across his stubble. "My brother Marco didn't make it out. I did." Lisa's eyes softened with something that looked like genuine compassion, not pity. There was a difference. Pity was what people gave you from a distance. Compassion was what you felt when you'd lived in the same hell. "I had a family once too," she said it quietly, like a secret. "Real family. Parents. A younger sister. Sunday dinners in Connecticut." Her fingers traced the rim of her wine glass absently. "They don't talk to me anymore. Haven't in 2 years. 2 years. The same amount of time she'd been with Vincent. Rocco didn't need to ask why her family cut her off. When Vincent Carlino decided you belonged to him, everyone else disappeared. That was the price. "Do you ever," Lisa started, then stopped herself. She looked around the restaurant like she was checking for cameras, for listening devices, for Vincent's ghosts. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Do you ever think about who you'd be if you could start over? It was the kind of question that got people killed in their world. The kind of question that implied you wanted out, that you were thinking about betrayal, that you'd grown soft. Rocco should have shut it down immediately, should have reminded her that they didn't get second chances, that their choices had been made years ago, that survival meant accepting your cage. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice dropping to match hers. Listen. The word came out like a prayer. Every morning when I wake up, I look at this. He touched the name tattooed across his chest, hidden under his shirt. Marco, my brother. Dead at 17 because he wanted out. His dark eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made the candlelight seem dim. And I think today I'll be different. Today I'll walk away. But you don't. Lisa said it without judgment. Just fact. But I don't. Rocco's jaw tightened. Because walking away means dying. And dying means Marco died for nothing. The weight of that confession settled between them like a third presence at the table. Lisa reached across the tablecloth. White linen, expensive. Vincent's money paying for everything, and her fingers brushed against Rocco's hand. Just barely. Just enough to send electricity straight through his nervous system. I'm 24 years old, her voice cracked slightly, and I feel like I've been dead for 2 years. Before Rocco could respond, before he could pull his hand away or tell her this was a mistake, or remember that Vincent's surveillance probably covered this restaurant, the maitre d' appeared at their table. His face was professionally neutral, but his eyes carried a warning. Signorina Palmer, there's a call for you. Lisa's face went blank, that prison smile returning. She withdrew her hand like she'd been burned. Of course. She stood gracefully, dabbing her lips with a napkin. I'll be right back. Rocco watched her walk toward the back of the restaurant where the private offices were, and his gut twisted with something that felt like dread. Vincent was checking in, making sure his property was where it belonged, making sure his loyal soldier was doing his job. She returned 5 minutes later, and everything about her had changed. Her shoulders were straighter, her smile was fixed, and the light that had been in her eyes during dinner had been extinguished like someone blowing out a candle. She sat down without meeting his gaze. We need to go. Her voice was mechanical. Vincent wants me home by midnight. It was barely 9:30. Rocco signed the check without looking at it, grabbed his leather jacket, and followed her out of the restaurant. The Manhattan night air hit them like a physical thing, summer heat mixing with exhaust fumes and the distant sound of sirens. Lisa walked to the charger in silence, her heels clicking against concrete like a countdown. Inside the car, Rocco started the engine but didn't move. He couldn't, not yet. Not with the way she was staring straight ahead like a soldier preparing for execution. What did he say to you? The question came out before he could stop it. Unprofessional. Dangerous. Stupid. Lisa's laugh was hollow. He said he loves me. She finally turned to look at Rocco, and there were tears in her eyes that she refused to let fall. He said he can't wait to see me. He said he's been thinking about me all night. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He said if anyone touches me, he'll know. The threat was clear. Vincent had cameras everywhere. Vincent had eyes everywhere. Vincent owned this city, and everyone in it, including both of them. That's how it works. Rocco said it like he was trying to convince himself. That's just how it works. No. Lisa's voice was suddenly sharp, alive, furious. That's how it works for people who've given up. She grabbed Rocco's wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. You know what he told me tonight on that call? He told me he's having dinner with some businessmen, celebrating a deal, drinking expensive scotch and smoking cigars while I sit in that penthouse like a doll on a shelf. Rocco felt his pulse quicken under her touch. Her fingers were right over his watch, the steel timepiece that suddenly felt like it was burning his skin. What are you saying? I'm saying. Lisa released him abruptly, like she'd realized she'd said too much. She pressed herself back against the passenger seat, creating distance. I'm saying, take me somewhere. Anywhere but that penthouse. Just for an hour. Her eyes met his, desperate and defiant. Please. It was the worst possible idea. The kind of decision that ended careers, ended lives, ended everything. Rocco's hand tightened on the steering wheel as he calculated the risks. Vincent finding out. Vincent's cameras. Vincent's men reporting back. Then he looked at Lisa. Really looked at her. 24 years old, and already dead inside. A prisoner in designer clothes with a diamond collar marking her as property. Chill. The word came out rough, but gentle. I know a place. He put the charger in gear and drove away from the Upper East Side, away from Vincent's territory, toward the meatpacking district where the night was younger and the rules were blurrier, toward a club called Inferno, where the music was loud enough to drown out conscience, toward the biggest mistake of his life. Lisa didn't ask where they were going. She just rolled down the window, let the wind destroy her perfect hair, and smiled like a prisoner tasting freedom for the first time. Inferno lived up to its name. The club was housed in a converted industrial building in the meatpacking district, all exposed brick and steel beams with lighting that pulsed red and blue like a living heartbeat. The bass line from the speakers was so heavy, Rocco felt it in his chest before they even reached the door. This wasn't Vincent's territory, not completely, and that made it both safer and infinitely more dangerous. The bouncer recognized the family tattoo on Rocco's forearm and waved them through without a word. Inside, the heat was oppressive. Bodies pressed together on the dance floor, moving to electronic music that seemed designed to strip away inhibition. Lisa paused at the entrance, her eyes adjusting to the strobing lights, and Rocco saw her transform. The prison smile disappeared. The careful posture relaxed. She looked alive. I haven't been somewhere like this in... She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. 2 years. 2 years since Vincent decided she belonged to him. Rocco shed his leather jacket and draped it over the bar, ordering 2 drinks without asking what she wanted. Whiskey for him, something clear and strong for her. The bartender slid them across the glass surface, and Lisa downed hers in one motion like it was medicine, like courage in liquid form. Again, she pushed the glass back across the bar. Her eyes were bright now, feverish. And then I want to dance. That's not. Rocco started, but she was already moving toward the dance floor, leaving him standing at the bar with his untouched whiskey and a growing sense that he'd just made a catastrophic error in judgment. But he followed. Of course he followed. He'd been following since the moment she stepped out of that elevator. On the dance floor, Lisa became someone else entirely. She moved like the music was part of her DNA, her body finding the rhythm with an ease that suggested she'd done this before, in some other life before Vincent, before the diamond collar and the penthouse prison, before she'd learned to smile sadly. Rocco stood at the edge, trying to maintain some semblance of professional distance, but Lisa pulled him in, literally. Her hands grabbed his, tugging him into the crush of bodies, and suddenly they were moving together. Not touching, not yet, but close enough that he could smell the Coco Chanel. Number 5 mixing with sweat and heat and possibility. Relax. She laughed, and it was the first genuine laugh he'd heard from her. You look like you're guarding a bank vault. I'm guarding you. The words came out more intense than he intended. The music swallowed them, but Lisa heard. She always heard. She moved closer, her lips near his ear so he could hear her over the pounding bass. What if I don't want to be guarded? Her breath was warm against his neck. What if I want to be reckless? Every instinct Rocco had spent 7 years developing screamed at him to step back, to create distance, to remember Vincent's face when he'd said, "She's mine." But Lisa's eyes were locked onto his with an intensity that made the rest of the club disappear. The lights, the music, the hundreds of people around them, none of it mattered. You don't know what you're saying. Rocco's voice was rough. Reckless gets people killed. Good. Lisa's smile was sharp. Dangerous. At least I'd feel something before I died. The song changed, slowing down fractionally, and the crowd shifted around them. Someone bumped into Rocco's back, pushing him forward, and suddenly there was no space between them at all. Lisa's hands came to rest on his chest, right over where Marco's name was tattooed beneath his shirt. She could probably feel his heartbeat hammering, unstable, betraying every lie he was telling himself about professional distance. I want to play a game. She said it so quietly he almost didn't hear, but the way she was looking at him like he was the only solid thing in a dissolving world made every word matter. A simple game. Rocco's hand found his watch instinctively, touching the steel band like it could anchor him to sanity. What kind of game? Lisa's fingers traced up his chest, along his collarbone, ghosting across the scar on his jaw. Every touch was deliberate, calculated, devastating. If you kiss me first. She paused, her blue-gray eyes holding his with an intensity that felt like drowning. You lose. The words hung in the air between them, more dangerous than any weapon. Rocco's breath caught. He understood immediately what she was doing. Turning power into a game, making control into choice, taking the one thing Vincent couldn't buy and weaponizing it. And if you kiss me first. His voice came out hoarse. He was already playing, already lost. Then you're mine. She said it with absolute certainty. No hesitation, no doubt. Not his, not the family's, mine. It was insane. It was suicide. It was the kind of game that ended with bodies in the East River and blood on expensive marble floors. Vincent had cameras everywhere. Vincent had eyes everywhere. Vincent would know. But Lisa was looking at him like he was the first person in 2 years who'd seen her as something other than property, like he was the first person who'd asked her what she wanted instead of telling her what she was, like he was the answer to a question she'd been asking in silence for so long she'd forgotten what her own voice sounded like. Why? Rocco needed to understand. Needed to know if this was manipulation, if this was a test Vincent had orchestrated, if this was just another way the boss controlled his pieces. Why me? Because you're different. Lisa's hand slid up to cup his face, her thumbs brushing against his stubble. Because when I asked if you ever wanted to walk away, you didn't lie to me. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow cut through the pounding music. Because I think you see me, not what I look like, not what I'm worth. Just me. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to him in 7 years. Rocco's hands moved on their own, finding her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. They were dancing now. If you could call it dancing. Their bodies moving together to a rhythm that had nothing to do with the music. I can't, he said, it even as his hands tightened on her hips. Vincent isn't here. Lisa's lips were inches from his now, close enough that he could feel her breath. Right now, in this moment, he doesn't exist. It's just you and me, and a choice. Her eyes searched his. So choose, Rocco. Be his soldier, or be mine. The club pulsed around them. Red lights, blue lights, bodies moving like a single organism. Someone screamed in laughter nearby. Someone else dropped a glass that shattered against the floor. The DJ transitioned into a song with a heavier bass line that Rocco felt in his bones. And Lisa waited, not pushing, not manipulating, just waiting for him to decide who he was. Rocco's thumb traced her cheekbone, and he felt her shiver under his touch. His mind was racing through calculations, the cameras, the consequences, Vincent's face, Marco's name tattooed over his heart, 7 years of loyalty, 26 years of survival instincts screaming at him to stop. The rules. His voice was barely audible. Say them again. Lisa's smile was victorious and heartbreaking in equal measure. She leaned in, her lips brushing against his ear as she spoke. If you kiss me first, you lose everything. Your position, your safety, your life. She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. But if I kiss you first, then for the first time in 2 years, I win something that matters. That's not fair. Rocco's hands were shaking now, his fingers pressed into her waist like she was the only thing keeping him upright. That's not fair at all. Nothing about this is fair. Lisa's fingers tangled in his hair, and Rocco's vision narrowed to just her face, those blue-gray eyes that had looked dead in Vincent's penthouse and were now blazing with something that looked like hope. But that's the game. Those are the rules. The music swelled, the lights strobed faster, and Rocco made a decision that would change everything. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, to laugh it off, to end this before it destroyed them both. But Lisa didn't move. She tilted her face up, her lips parting slightly, and waited. The game was still on. The tension between them was unbearable. Electric, the kind of anticipation that made time feel elastic. Rocco's lips were a breath away from hers, so close he could taste her lipstick in the air. You're already losing, Lisa whispered against his almost kiss. Look at you, you can barely breathe. She was right. His chest was tight, his heart was hammering, and every nerve in his body was screaming for contact. But he held back, held himself at that impossible distance where want and discipline battled for control. Not yet, he managed to say, his voice wrecked. Not yet. Lisa's laugh was low, triumphant. She pressed herself closer, her body flush against his, and began to move, not pulling away, that would have been mercy, but dancing, swaying, making every point of contact between them feel like a promise and a threat. Her hands slid down his chest, across his abdomen, coming to rest on his belt. You're dying to. She said it like a fact. I can feel it. Rocco's hand left his watch and found her face, tilting her chin up so she had to look at him. His thumb traced her lower lip, and he felt her breath hitch. So are you. Maybe. Lisa's eyes were dark now, pupils blown wide in the strobing lights. But I'm better at waiting than you are. It was a challenge. It was torture. It was the most alive Rocco had felt since Marco died. He leaned in again, closer this time, close enough that their lips brushed. Not a kiss, just contact, just enough to make them both gasp. Lisa's fingers dug into his shoulders. That's cheating. You didn't say anything about cheating. Rocco's voice was destroyed, raw. You just said I couldn't kiss you first. Technically, Lisa's words were cut off as Rocco's lips moved to her jaw, pressing against the point where her pulse hammered wildly. Not a kiss, just a touch, just his breath against her skin. She made a sound low in her throat that shot straight through him. The song changed again, something slower, heavier with bass. The crowd around them thinned slightly as people moved toward the bar, but Rocco and Lisa stayed locked together in the center of the dance floor, an island of terrible decisions surrounded by witnesses who didn't care. I can't do this, Lisa said it suddenly, but she didn't move away. If anything, she pressed closer. I can't wait anymore. Then don't. Rocco's lips were at her ear now, his voice rough with everything he wasn't saying. End the game, Lisa. Kiss me and end this. For a moment, he thought she would. Her hands came up to frame his face. Her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that felt like falling. The entire club seemed to hold its breath. The music faded to background noise. Time stretched. And then, Lisa smiled, that same sad smile from the penthouse, and whispered two words that sealed both their fates. Not yet. They danced for another hour, trapped in a game neither could win and neither could abandon. Every song was a new test of control, Lisa's hands wandering across Rocco's chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her exposed back, their lips coming within millimeters of contact before one of them pulled away with a shaky laugh. The air between them was so charged it felt like the club itself might catch fire. Other dancers gave them space, sensing something dangerous, something private happening in public. By 11:30 they'd migrated to the VIP lounge on the second floor, where the music was slightly muted and the lighting was dimmer. Lisa sat on one of the leather couches, her legs crossed, her eyes never leaving Rocco's face as he leaned against the railing overlooking the dance floor. He'd shed his jacket hours ago, his gray t-shirt damp with sweat, the black rose tattoo on his forearm catching the low light. Tell me about him, Lisa said suddenly. She patted the couch beside her in invitation. The tattoo on your chest. Marco. Rocco hesitated, then sat down next to her, close but not touching, maintaining that impossible distance they'd established. His hand went to his chest instinctively, pressing against where his brother's name was inked into his skin. My little brother. Dead at 17. How? Lisa's voice was gentle, but her eyes were sharp. She wanted to know him, really know him. Not the soldier Vincent employed, but the man underneath. A rival family. Rocco's jaw tightened, his hand unconsciously finding his watch and gripping it. They wanted to send a message to my neighborhood. Marco was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He looked at Lisa then. Really looked at her. Vincent found me 3 days after the funeral, said he could give me purpose, protection, power. And you believed him, Lisa said it without judgment, just understanding. I was 19 and angry and stupid. Rocco's laugh was bitter. I thought power meant safety. I thought if I was strong enough, scary enough, part of the right family, no one could hurt me again. His dark eyes met hers. I was wrong. Lisa reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed her hand over his heart, right over Marco's name. You're not stupid, Rocco. You're surviving. There's a difference. The touch was innocent, comforting rather than seductive, but it sent electricity through Rocco's entire system anyway. Everything with Lisa was charged now, loaded with the game they were still playing. He covered her hand with his, pressing it more firmly against his chest. What about you? His voice was rough. How does a girl from Connecticut end up as Vincent Carlino's prisoner? Lisa's expression darkened, but she didn't remove her hand. I met him at a gallery opening 2 years ago. I was 22, fresh out of college, trying to make it as an actress. Her smile was sad. He was charming, powerful. He made me feel special, like I was the only woman in the world. What changed? Rocco knew the answer, but he needed to hear her say it. He did. Lisa's fingers curled into Rocco's shirt. Or maybe he didn't change. Maybe that's who he always was and I was too naive to see it. She took a shaky breath. 3 months in, I told him I got a callback for an off-Broadway show. I was so excited. I thought he'd be proud. But he wasn't. Rocco could picture Vincent's face, that cold smile, those black eyes that saw everything as property. He said actresses were whores. Lisa's voice was flat now, mechanical. He said if I really loved him, I'd give up that dream, focus on being his. She finally looked at Rocco, and there were tears in her eyes she refused to let fall. I said no. I went to the audition anyway. What did he do? Rocco's hand tightened over hers. He bought the theater. Lisa laughed, but it was a broken sound. Bought it, shut down the production, and blacklisted me from every theater in New York." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Then he took me to his penthouse and told me I'd never leave, that I belonged to him now, that if I tried to run, he'd kill my family." Rocco felt rage building in his chest, hot, consuming rage that made his vision narrow. He'd done terrible things for Vincent Carlino. Collected debts, delivered threats, broken bones, but this trapping a woman, stealing her dreams, marking her as property. This was different. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" He knew the answer to that too, but he needed to keep her talking, needed to understand. "Who would I tell?" Lisa's laugh was hollow. "The police? Half of them are on Vincent's payroll. My family? They think I chose this life, that I'm some gold digger who picked money over them." She pulled her hand away from Rocco's chest suddenly, creating distance. "Everyone thinks I'm lucky. Lucky to be with Vincent Carlino. Lucky to live in a penthouse. Lucky to wear diamonds. But you're not." Rocco said it like a fact. "But I'm not." Lisa stood abruptly, walking to the railing overlooking the dance floor below. The music pulsed up at them, a Latin reggaeton beat that made the floor vibrate. "I'm dying, Rocco, slowly. Every day in that penthouse I disappear a little more." Rocco stood and moved behind her, close enough that she could feel his presence but not touching. Not yet. The game was still on, even in this moment of raw honesty. Then why the game? Why tonight? Lisa turned to face him, and her expression was fierce. "Because for the first time in 2 years, I saw someone who looked at me like I was a person. Not property, not a prize, just someone." Her hand came up to touch his face, her thumb tracing the scar on his jaw, and I thought, maybe, just maybe, I could have one night where I made the choice, where I had the power. It was the most honest thing she'd said all night. Rocco's hands found her waist, pulling her closer. They were back in dangerous territory now, that magnetic pull between them stronger than ever. "You do have the power, Lisa. You've had it since you walked out of that elevator." "Then prove it." Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. Her lips were inches from his again, that impossible distance that had been torturing them all night. "Let me win." But before Rocco could respond, before he could close that distance or pull away or make any decision at all, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Harsh. Insistent. The ringtone he'd assigned to only one person. "Vincent." Lisa's face went pale. "Don't answer it." But Rocco was already pulling the phone out, his stomach dropping as he saw the screen. 3 missed calls in the last 10 minutes while they'd been up in the VIP lounge. 5 text messages, all from the boss. "I have to." His voice was tight, professional distance trying desperately to reassert itself. "If I don't, he'll send people." Lisa stepped back, her arms wrapping around herself protectively. The vibrant, alive woman from the dance floor disappeared, replaced by the careful prisoner from the penthouse. "Then answer it. Be his dog." The words stung because they were true. Rocco swiped to answer, bringing the phone to his ear. "Boss, where the fuck are you?" Vincent's voice was calm, which was infinitely more terrifying than if he'd been yelling. "I've been calling for 20 minutes. Inferno. The club and meatpacking." Rocco forced his voice to stay neutral, professional. Lisa wanted to dance. "I thought it was safer than sending her alone." A pause, long enough that Rocco could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, long enough to imagine Vincent reviewing security footage, calculating angles, measuring distances. "Put her on." Vincent's tone brooked no argument. Rocco held the phone out to Lisa, and she took it with shaking hands. He watched as she brought it to her ear, watched her face transform into something plastic and pleasant. "Hi, baby. Yes, I'm having fun. Rocco's been the perfect gentleman." The lie was so smooth it was almost believable. Almost. Vincent said something Rocco couldn't hear, and Lisa's smile widened fractionally. "Of course, I'll be home soon. I love you too." She ended the call and handed the phone back to Rocco without meeting his eyes. When she spoke, her voice was empty. "He wants me home. Now." "Lisa," Rocco started, but she was already walking toward the stairs leading down to the main floor. Her shoulders were straight, her head held high, but he could see the way her hands trembled, could see the prison door slamming shut again. He followed her through the club, grabbing his leather jacket from the bar, and they walked to the charger in complete silence. The summer heat hit them like a wall after the air-conditioned interior, but neither of them acknowledged it. Lisa slid into the passenger seat and stared straight ahead, that diamond collar around her throat catching the streetlights. Rocco started the engine, but didn't pull out of the parking spot immediately. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. "I'm sorry." "For what?" Lisa's voice was mechanical. "You did your job. You kept me safe. You followed orders. She finally turned to look at him, and her eyes were devastated. That's all you were supposed to do. I didn't. Rocco's jaw clenched. Tonight wasn't just following orders. Wasn't it? Lisa's smile was sad again. That same expression from the penthouse elevator. The game is over, Rocco. No one wins. No one loses. It was just pretend. She said it like she believed it, like she could erase the last 4 hours with words, like the way they'd moved together on the dance floor had been nothing more than an elaborate performance. But Rocco had spent 7 years reading people, calculating risks, identifying lies, and he knew with absolute certainty that Lisa was lying. To him, to herself, to the security cameras that were probably recording this moment. It wasn't pretend, he said it quietly, firmly. And you know it. Lisa looked away, her fingers finding that diamond collar again. When she spoke, her voice cracked. It doesn't matter what I know. It doesn't matter what I feel. She took a shaky breath. Take me home, Rocco. Please, before this gets worse. Worse. As if it could get worse than this. Driving Vincent's prisoner back to her cage while every instinct in Rocco's body screamed at him to drive in the opposite direction. To head for the George Washington Bridge and keep going until New York was a memory. To choose the impossible thing over the safe thing. But Marco's face flashed in his mind. 17 and dead because someone made the wrong choice. Because someone thought they could escape. Rocco put the Charger in gear and drove toward 432 Park Avenue. Toward Vincent's penthouse. Toward the end of whatever had started tonight. The city lights blurred past them. Red, white, gold, and neither of them spoke. The silence was heavier than any words could have been. They were 3 blocks from the penthouse when Lisa finally broke. Stop the car. Her voice was urgent, desperate. Please, Rocco, stop the car. He pulled over immediately, heart hammering, hand instinctively going toward the gun tucked into his waistband. What's wrong? Are you? But Lisa was already unbuckling her seatbelt, already turning toward him with wild eyes and trembling hands. I can't go back there. Not yet. Not like this. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer. The game isn't over. I'm ending it now. Lisa, Rocco tried to warn her. Tried to give her one last chance to choose the safe option. But she wasn't listening. She kissed him. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was desperate, furious. 2 years of captivity and 4 hours of torture exploding into a single moment of choice. Lisa's hands fisted in Rocco's shirt, pulling him across the center console as her lips moved against his with an urgency that felt like drowning and breathing simultaneously. For half a second, Rocco froze, every survival instinct he'd honed over 7 years screaming at him to stop, to pull away, to remember Vincent's face. Then he kissed her back, his hands tangled in her hair, ruining the perfect styling, and he kissed her like a man who'd been holding his breath underwater and finally broke the surface, like a man who'd spent 26 years being someone else's soldier and was choosing for the first time to be himself. The Charger's interior was too small, the gear shift digging into his ribs, but none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except Lisa's lips against his, her breath in his lungs, her fingers gripping him like he was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Lisa's eyes were bright with tears and triumph. I won. Her voice was shaking. I kissed you first. That means you're mine. I know. Rocco's thumb traced her swollen lower lip, and he felt her shiver. I'm yours. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than any vow. Lisa laughed, a broken, beautiful sound, and pulled him in for another kiss. This one slower, deeper, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise neither of them could keep. Rocco's phone buzzed again in his pocket, Vincent's name flashing on the screen, but he ignored it. Let it ring. Let the boss wonder. Let the whole family know he'd made his choice. They kissed until their lips were bruised and breathing was difficult. Until the windows fogged up and the summer heat inside the car became unbearable. Until reality started creeping back in at the edges, reminding them that choices had consequences and some games you couldn't win. We need to move. Rocco's voice was rough as he pulled back, his forehead resting against hers. We can't stay here. Not in the open. Then where? Lisa's hands were still gripping his shirt like she was afraid he'd disappear. Where can we go that he won't find us? Rocco's mind was already calculating. Safe houses, exits, routes out of the city. 7 years with the Carlino family had taught him every secret, every weakness, every escape route. I know a place, Brooklyn, a warehouse in Red Hook. I bought it 2 years ago under a fake name. You have an escape plan. Lisa said it with something like wonder. You've been planning to run. Everyone in our world has an escape plan. Rocco started the engine, checking his mirrors with the paranoia of someone who'd survived this long by never trusting safety. Most people just never use it. He pulled back into traffic, heading toward the Williamsburg Bridge instead of the penthouse. His phone continued buzzing, call after call, text after text, Vincent's digital leash trying to pull him back. Rocco turned it off completely and threw it on the dashboard. The gesture felt monumental, final. You didn't ignore Vincent Carlino unless you were ready to die. They were halfway across the bridge when Lisa's phone rang. She looked at the screen and her face went white. It's him. Don't answer. Rocco's jaw was tight, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He'll try to get in your head. But Lisa was already swiping to answer, bringing the phone to her ear with a shaking hand. Vincent, Whatever she was going to say was cut off by Vincent's voice, loud enough that Rocco could hear it from the driver's seat. Calm, measured, absolutely lethal. Where are you, baby? The endearment was poison wrapped in silk. Rocco was supposed to have you home 30 minutes ago. I'm starting to worry. Don't lie to me. Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than a shout. I can see you, Lisa. I can always see you. Lisa's hand flew to her diamond collar, and Rocco's stomach dropped as he realized what Vincent meant. The jewelry. Vincent had put a tracker in the jewelry. Of course he had. The man owned half of Manhattan through paranoia and control. Of course he'd tagged his favorite possession. Take it off, Rocco said urgently. The necklace, take it off now. But Lisa's hands were frozen on the collar, her eyes wide with terror. On the phone, Vincent was still talking, that calm, measured voice describing exactly what he was watching. You're on the Williamsburg Bridge, heading toward Brooklyn. That's not home, baby. That's not where you belong. Vincent, please. Lisa's voice was pleading now. I just needed some air. Put Rocco on the phone. It wasn't a request. Now. Lisa held the phone out to Rocco with trembling hands, and he took it without slowing down. The charger's speedometer climbed, 70, 80, 90 miles per hour. Other cars blurred past them as they flew across the bridge into Brooklyn. Boss. Rocco's voice was steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Professional. Calm. The voice of a soldier who knew he was about to commit treason. What do you think you're doing? Vincent's question was almost conversational. Taking my girl on a joyride? Forgetting your place? She wanted to keep going. Rocco said it like it was simple, like this was still salvageable. I'm taking care of her. Like you asked. I saw the footage, Rocco. Vincent's voice hardened, all pretense of civility dropping away. From the parking garage behind Inferno, 47 seconds. That's how long you had your tongue down her throat in my car with my girl. The words hit like bullets. Lisa made a small sound of despair, her hands covering her mouth. Rocco's mind raced. The parking garage, of course. Vincent had cameras there. Of course he'd been watching. Of course there was no escape. I can explain, Rocco started, but Vincent cut him off. No, you can't. The boss's breathing was heavier now, anger breaking through the calm. 7 years, Rocco. 7 years I gave you. I took you off the streets when you were nothing. I gave you purpose. I gave you family. I gave you everything. His voice rose. And you repay me by touching what's mine. She's not yours. The words came out before Rocco could stop them. She's not property. She's not. Shut up. Vincent's roar was so loud Lisa flinched. You don't get to tell me what she is. You don't get to decide. You're a soldier, a dog, and dogs who forget their place get put down. Rocco ended the call and threw the phone out the window, watching it shatter against the asphalt in his rearview mirror. Lisa was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face as she worked frantically to unclasp the diamond collar. Her fingers were shaking too badly to manage the delicate mechanism. Let me. Rocco reached over with one hand, keeping the other on the wheel as they flew through Brooklyn streets. His fingers found the clasp and released it in one smooth motion. The collar fell into Lisa's lap, diamonds and platinum worth more than most people made in a year, and she threw it out the window without hesitation. He's coming for us. Her voice was hollow. He's not going to let this go. I know. Rocco took a sharp turn, tires squealing, heading deeper into the industrial district, where streetlights were sparse and security cameras were non-existent. That's why we need to disappear. Behind them, Rocco caught the flash of headlights in his rearview mirror. Not one car, multiple cars, black SUVs moving in formation, closing the distance with professional precision. Vincent's men, fast response, coordinated attack. They'd been mobilized before Rocco had even thrown the phone away. Hold on. Rocco's voice was tight as he pushed the charger harder, the engine roaring. This is going to get rough. The chase turned violent fast. The lead SUV pulled alongside them, and Rocco saw the passenger window roll down, saw the gun barrel emerge. He swerved hard right, taking them down a side street lined with abandoned warehouses, and the first shots rang out, sharp cracks that punched holes through the Charger's rear window. Lisa screamed and ducked down, covering her head with her hands. Glass rained down on them, glittering in the streetlights like diamonds, like the collar she'd thrown away. Rocco kept driving, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching for his own gun tucked in his waistband. "Stay down," he barked the order, then leaned out his window and fired 3 shots at the pursuing SUV. One hit the windshield, spider-webbing the glass. The SUV swerved but didn't slow. Behind it, 3 more vehicles closed in. The warehouse district was a maze of narrow streets and dead ends, but Rocco had run jobs here before. He knew every turn, every alley, every escape route. He took them down a service road that barely fit the Charger, scraping paint off both sides as the SUVs struggled to follow. One got stuck, its wider frame jamming between buildings. 2 more remained. Rocco's phone, the burner he kept in the glove compartment for exactly this kind of situation, started ringing. He knew who it was before Lisa checked the screen. "It's a blocked number." "Answer it." Rocco took another hard turn, and Lisa grabbed the dashboard to steady herself. "Put it on speaker." She did. Vincent's voice filled the car, and it was different now. Not calm, not measured, raw with fury, and something that sounded almost like pain. "You're dead, Rocco. You and her. Both dead. Then come kill me yourself." Rocco's voice was cold. "Stop sending your dogs. Face me." A pause. Then Vincent's laugh, bitter, hateful. "You want a fair fight, after what you did?" Another pause. And when he spoke again, his voice was soft, dangerous. "Fine. East River. The old pier near Red Hook. 1 hour. You show up, I let her live." It was a trap. Obviously a trap. Vincent Carlino didn't do fair fights, he did executions. But Rocco knew that Pier knew the layout, knew the exits, knew how to turn an ambush into an advantage. 1 hour. Rocco agreed. "Just you and me." "Just you and me." Vincent's voice was almost gentle now. "And Rocco, you better pray you die quick. Because what I'm going to do to her after I kill you..." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The threat was clear. The call ended. Behind them, the 2 remaining SUVs had fallen back, not giving up, but regrouping, waiting for the trap to spring. Rocco pulled into a narrow alley and killed the engine, the Charger's damaged body ticking as it cooled. In the sudden silence, Lisa's breathing was loud and ragged. She looked at Rocco with eyes that held terror and determination in equal measure. "He's going to kill us both." "Probably." Rocco reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, steady, grounding. "But at least we'll die free." Lisa laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "That's not very comforting." "I'm not very good at comfort." Rocco brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "But I'm very good at survival. And I'm very good at killing." "Rocco," Lisa's voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I started the game. I kissed you. No." Rocco cut her off firmly. "I made my choice. I could have said no. I could have pushed you away. I could have been Vincent's dog." His dark eyes locked onto hers with absolute certainty. "I chose you instead." The words settled between them like a vow. Lisa leaned across the console and kissed him again. Softer this time, sweeter, like she was memorizing the taste of him before the end. When they pulled apart, she was crying. "What do we do?" Her voice was small. "He has men everywhere. He has cameras everywhere. He owns this city." "Not everywhere." Rocco started the engine again, driving deeper into the industrial district. "The warehouse is 5 minutes from here. We hole up, I grab my emergency kit, and then we make Vincent think he's won." His jaw tightened, and when he shows up at that pier thinking he's executing a traitor, I put a bullet through his skull instead. "That's not a plan." Lisa's voice was shaking. "That's suicide." "Maybe." Rocco took her hand again, squeezing. "But it's the only chance we have. Vincent won't stop. He'll hunt us forever. The only way we're free is if he's dead." Lisa was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she straightened in her seat, wiping her tears away with the back of her hand. When she spoke, her voice was stronger, resolved. "Then teach me to shoot. If we're doing this, I'm not going to be useless." Rocco looked at her, really looked at her. 24 years old, terrified, determined, choosing to fight instead of submit. "You're not useless, Lisa. You never were." "Prove it." She echoed the words she'd said on the dance floor hours ago. Give me a gun and teach me to use it. They pulled up to the warehouse 5 minutes later, a squat brick building with broken windows and rusted fire escapes. Rocco's safe house, his escape plan. The place he'd bought 2 years ago when he'd first started realizing that Vincent Carlino's family wasn't loyalty, it was slavery. Inside, the warehouse was mostly empty except for a single room in the back with a mattress, supplies, and a locked metal box containing everything Rocco needed for situations exactly like this. Guns, ammunition, cash, fake IDs. He opened the box and began loading weapons with practiced efficiency. Lisa stood in the doorway, backlit by the dim light filtering through the broken windows. Her dress was torn, her hair was wild, her makeup was smudged. She looked nothing like Vincent's perfect prisoner. She looked free. Rocco, her voice made him pause. If this goes wrong, if Vincent kills us, I want you to know something. Don't, Rocco's jaw tightened. Don't do the goodbye speech. I'm not. Lisa walked toward him slowly, deliberately. I'm doing the thank you speech. She stopped in front of him, placing her hands on his chest right over Marco's name. Thank you for seeing me. For the first time in 2 years, someone saw me as more than property. Rocco's hands covered hers, pressing them more firmly against his heart. You saw me too. For the first time in 7 years, someone saw me as more than a soldier. They stood like that for a moment, 2 people who'd spent years being invisible finally being seen. Then Lisa tilted her face up and Rocco kissed her, not desperately this time, not urgently, just honestly. The kiss of 2 people who'd made their choice and were willing to die for it. When they pulled apart, Rocco handed her a gun, a small 9mm, easy to handle. Safety's here, aim, center mass, don't hesitate. His eyes locked onto hers. If Vincent gets past me, you shoot him. You understand? Don't talk, don't negotiate, just shoot. Lisa took the gun, her hands steadier now. What if something happens to you? Then you run. Rocco's voice was firm. You take the car, you drive to the George Washington Bridge, and you disappear. I have cash in the box, I have IDs. You become someone else. Without you. Lisa said it like a fact. Without me. Rocco agreed. Free. They had 45 minutes before the meeting at the pier. 45 minutes to prepare. 45 minutes to accept that they were probably going to die tonight. But for those 45 minutes they were together. Alive. Free. And that, Rocco realized as he loaded his gun and checked his ammunition, was worth dying for. They didn't talk about strategy, didn't plan escape routes or coordinate positions. Instead, they sat on the mattress in the back room of the warehouse, backs against the cold brick wall, Lisa's head on Rocco's shoulder, and his arm wrapped around her like a shield. Outside, the summer night pressed against the broken windows, bringing with it the distant sound of sirens and the smell of the East River, the city that had caged them both for so long, indifferent to their survival. Rocco's watch read 1:30 in the morning. They had 15 minutes before the meeting at the pier, 15 minutes before Vincent Carlino, and however many men he'd brought showed up expecting an execution. 15 minutes left to be alive. Tell me something true. Lisa's voice was soft, her fingers tracing the black rose tattoo on Rocco's forearm. Something you've never told anyone. Rocco was quiet for a long moment, his thumb rubbing circles on her shoulder. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he'd spent 7 years burying. I think about Marco every day, every single day, and I wonder if he'd be proud of me or ashamed. He swallowed hard. I spent 7 years trying to honor his death by being strong, by being powerful, by surviving. His jaw clenched, but all I did was become the thing that killed him. Lisa lifted her head to look at him, and her eyes were full of understanding. You're not that thing, Rocco. Not anymore. How do you know? The question came out desperate. How do you know I'm not just another monster? Because monsters don't choose love over power. Lisa's hand came up to cup his face, her thumb brushing across the scar on his jaw. Because monsters don't spend 7 years hating what they've become. Because monsters don't look at a woman they just met and see a person instead of property. Her voice cracked. You're not a monster. You're just someone who forgot how to be human. The words hit Rocco like a physical blow. He closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against Lisa's, and for the first time in 7 years, he let himself feel it. The guilt, the shame, the weight of every choice he'd made in Vincent's name, the blood on his hands, the lives he'd ruined, the man he'd become. I don't know how to be anything else. His voice was barely a whisper. I've been Vincent's soldier for so long I don't remember who I was before. Then be someone new. Lisa's lips brushed against his. Be mine. Be free. Be the man who chose me in that club even though it meant losing everything. Rocco opened his eyes and what he saw in Lisa's face broke something open inside his chest. Trust, hope, love, things he didn't deserve, had never earned, but she was offering anyway. Not because of what he'd done, but because of what he'd chosen. I'm terrified, he admitted it for the first time, of dying, of failing you, of Vincent winning. Me too. Lisa's smile was sad but genuine, but I'd rather die terrified and free than live safely in a cage. She kissed him then, slow, deep, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise. If we're going to die tonight, at least we die together. We're not going to die. Rocco said it with conviction he didn't entirely feel. I promise you, we're not going to die. But even as he said it, he knew the odds. Vincent would bring at least 10 men, probably more. They'd have automatic weapons, body armor, tactical training. Vincent didn't take chances, didn't leave openings, didn't lose, and Rocco was just one man with a handgun, and a woman who'd learned to shoot 15 minutes ago. The math was simple. They were going to die tonight. Unless. Rocco's mind started working through scenarios, calculating angles. The pier was exposed, open water on 3 sides, only one approach road. Vincent would expect Rocco to show up alone, probably already wounded from the chase, desperate and defeated. He wouldn't expect resistance, wouldn't expect strategy. Lisa, Rocco pulled back, his hands gripping her shoulders. I need you to listen very carefully. When we get to the pier, you stay in the car, hidden, low. You don't come out unless I call for you. No, Lisa's response was immediate. I'm not letting you face him alone. You have to. Rocco's voice was urgent. Vincent wants both of us dead, but if he thinks you're not there, he'll focus on me. That's our advantage. That's how we survive. By using you as bait? Lisa's eyes flashed with anger. By letting you walk into a death trap while I hide? By being smart. Rocco's jaw tightened. Vincent thinks I'm a soldier, that I'll follow the rules. Show up at the designated time, in the designated place, ready for execution. His dark eyes locked onto hers. But I'm not his soldier anymore. I don't follow his rules. Understanding dawned on Lisa's face. You're going to ambush him. I'm going to kill him, Rocco corrected. Before he can hurt you. Before he can take you back. Before he can win. His hands moved to frame her face. But I need you alive to do it. I need you safe. I need you to trust me. Lisa searched his eyes for a long moment, and Rocco could see her calculating, weighing trust against fear, hope against logic. Finally, she nodded. Okay, I trust you. Good. Rocco kissed her forehead, then her lips, then stood and began checking his weapons with renewed focus. 2 handguns, 1 knife, half a box of ammunition. Not enough to fight an army, but maybe enough to kill 1 man. They left the warehouse at 1:45, the Charger's damaged engine protesting but still running. The drive to the East River Pier took 8 minutes through empty Brooklyn streets. At this hour, the industrial waterfront was deserted, just abandoned warehouses, rusted shipping containers, and the dark water of the river reflecting city lights from Manhattan across the way. Rocco parked the Charger 3 blocks from the pier, in an alley between 2 warehouses where the car wouldn't be immediately visible. He killed the engine and turned to Lisa, whose face was pale but determined in the darkness. Remember what I said. You stay here. You stay low. You don't come out unless I call for you. And if you don't call? Lisa's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. Then you drive away. Rocco's hand found hers, squeezing tight. You take the cash from the glove compartment, you cross the bridge, and you disappear. You live, Lisa. You survive. You be free. Rocco. Tears started streaming down her face. I can't do this without you. Yes, you can. He pulled her across the console, kissing her with everything he couldn't say. Goodbye. I'm sorry. I love you. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived 2 years with Vincent. You'll survive this. Lisa grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. Don't you dare die on me, Rocco Santoro. Don't you dare make me free just to leave me alone. I don't plan to. Rocco's smile was grim. I've got a lot of reasons to survive tonight. You're all of them. He kissed her one more time, quick, hard, desperate, then pulled away and stepped out of the car. The summer night air was thick with humidity and the smell of industrial waste from the river. Rocco checked his gun, made sure the safety was off, and started walking toward the pier. Behind him he heard Lisa's voice, barely a whisper. I choose you too. He didn't turn around. Couldn't. If he looked at her one more time, he'd lose his nerve. would climb back in that car and drive until they hit Canada or the gas ran out, whichever came first. But Vincent would follow. Vincent always followed. The only way out was through. The pier came into view, a long wooden structure extending into the East River, lit by a single streetlight that cast everything in harsh yellow light and deep shadow. At the far end, Rocco could see them. Black SUVs arranged in a semicircle, headlights on, creating a killing field of illumination, men in dark suits standing like statues, and in the center, backlit and powerful, Vincent Carlino. The boss looked exactly as he always did. Three-piece suit, ruby ring, cigar in hand, calm, controlled, a man who'd never lost anything he couldn't afford to lose. When he saw Rocco approaching, he smiled. It was the same smile he'd given Rocco 7 years ago when he'd offered him a place in the family. The smile of a predator who knew the prey was already dead. "Rocco," Vincent's voice carried across the water, amplified by the silence. "I'm disappointed. I really thought you'd make this interesting. Bring some backup, stage an ambush." He shook his head slowly. "But no, you just walked right in, obedient to the end." Rocco stopped 50 feet from Vincent, his hand hovering near his concealed weapon. From this angle he could count them. 14 men, all armed, all watching him with the detached interest of professionals about to do a job. The math hadn't changed. He was going to die. Unless... "Where's the girl?" Vincent's voice hardened. "You were supposed to bring Lisa." "She's safe." Rocco kept his voice steady, professional, the soldier answering his commander one last time. "Somewhere you'll never find her." Vincent's smile disappeared. "That wasn't the deal, Rocco. The deal was both of you, together." "Deals change." Rocco's hand moved fractionally closer to his gun. "You taught me that. Nothing's sacred. Everything's negotiable. Loyalty is just another transaction." "Is that what you think?" Vincent took a step forward, and his men shifted, ready to move on his signal. "That I'm going to negotiate? That there's some world where you walk away from this?" His laugh was cold. "You're dead, Rocco. You were dead the moment you touched her. The only question is how much you suffer first." "Then let's find out." Rocco's voice was calm despite his racing heart. "Just you and me, like you said. Fair fight." Vincent considered this, his black eyes studying Rocco like a bug under glass. Then he nodded slowly, pulling his own gun from inside his jacket. "Fine, but when I kill you, I'm going to find her, and what I do to her will make death look like mercy." Rocco's hand moved to his gun, but Vincent was faster. The boss fired first. 3 shots, center mass, professional execution. Rocco felt the impacts, felt his body jerking backward, felt the pier beneath him as he collapsed. But he'd worn a vest, the light Kevlar he'd grabbed from the warehouse. Vincent's bullets hit hard enough to crack ribs but not penetrate. Rocco used the fall, rolled, came up firing. His first shot took Vincent in the shoulder, spinning him. His second shot missed as Vincent's men opened fire. The pier exploded into chaos. Bullets tore through the wooden planks, throwing up splinters. Rocco rolled behind a shipping container, his chest screaming with pain from the impacts. He could hear Vincent shouting orders, could hear footsteps approaching his position. This was it. The end. 14 against 1. Exposed position. No backup. Rocco closed his eyes for just a second, thought of Lisa hiding in the Charger 3 blocks away, and made his peace with dying. Then he heard it, the roar of an engine, tires squealing, and Lisa's voice, screaming his name as the black Charger came flying down the pier like a missile, headlights blinding, aimed directly at Vincent Carlino and his men. The Charger hit the first SUV like a battering ram, metal screaming against metal, and Vincent's men scattered like roaches under sudden light. Lisa didn't slow down. She kept the accelerator pinned, the damaged engine howling in protest, and Rocco watched in stunned disbelief as she turned his careful ambush into absolute carnage. 3 men went down, crushed between vehicles. 2 more dove into the river. The rest opened fire on the Charger, bullets punching through the windshield in a spiderweb of cracks. But Lisa kept driving, kept fighting, kept choosing survival over submission. Rocco used the chaos. He came out from behind the shipping container firing, taking down 2 of Vincent's men before they could turn their attention back to him. His ribs screamed with every breath from the Kevlar impacts, but adrenaline and desperation kept him moving. He emptied his clip, reloaded with shaking hands, and kept firing. The Charger finally stopped, engine dead, hood crumpled, steam rising from the destroyed radiator. For a terrible moment, Rocco couldn't see Lisa through the shattered glass and smoke, couldn't tell if she was alive or dead. Then the driver's door opened, and she stumbled out, the small 9mm in her hands, her face set with determination. "Get down," Rocco roared, and Lisa dropped flat as bullets tore through the air where she'd been standing. Rocco provided cover fire, advancing toward her position. His entire world narrowed to one objective: get to Lisa. Protect Lisa. Get Lisa out alive. He reached the charger and pulled her behind it, using the ruined vehicle as cover. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead where her head had hit the steering wheel. Her dress was torn beyond recognition, but her eyes were blazing. "I told you to stay in the car." Rocco's voice was rough with equal parts fury and admiration. "I did stay in the car." Lisa's smile was wild, manic. "I just didn't stay parked." She raised the gun, and Rocco saw her hands were steady now. No shaking, no hesitation. "How many left?" Rocco counted quickly. 6, plus Vincent. He checked his ammunition. "I've got 8 rounds. You?" 5. Lisa's jaw tightened. "Not enough." "Never is." Rocco grabbed her face with one hand, forcing her to look at him. "Listen to me. When I move, you run. You get to the water. You swim across. You disappear." "No." Lisa's response was immediate, fierce. "I'm not leaving you. Not again. Not ever." Before Rocco could argue, Vincent's voice cut through the chaos. "Touching." The boss emerged from behind one of the SUVs, his shoulder bleeding but his gun steady. His remaining men fanned out, creating a kill box around the charger. The whore learned to drive. How sweet. Lisa's hand tightened on her gun, but Rocco held her back. Vincent was baiting them, trying to draw them out into the open where his men could finish them. They needed a different play. "It's over, Vincent," Rocco called out, his voice carrying across the pier. "You've got 6 men left and 2 of us who have nothing to lose. You want to keep fighting? You'll win, but you'll die doing it." Vincent laughed, that same cold, hollow sound that had haunted Rocco's nightmares for 7 years. "You think I'm afraid of dying? I've been dead inside since I was younger than you, kid." He took a step forward and his men moved with him. "But you're afraid. I can see it. You're afraid of losing her." He was right. Rocco was terrified. Not of dying. He'd made peace with that, the moment he kissed Lisa in the car. But of failing her. Of watching Vincent take her back. Of 7 years of loyalty meaning less than 1 night of love. "You're wrong." Lisa's voice rang out clear and strong. She stood up slowly, emerging from behind the charger with her gun raised. "He's not afraid. He already won." Vincent's face twisted with rage. "Won? Look around you. You're surrounded. Outgunned. Bleeding. I own this pier. I own this city. I own you." "No." Lisa's smile was sad but genuine. That same sad smile Rocco had seen in the penthouse elevator a lifetime ago, but transformed now with something that looked like freedom. "You don't. Not anymore. Because for the first time in 2 years, I chose. I chose him. I chose me. I chose this." She gestured at the carnage around them. "The destroyed vehicles. The bodies. The blood. And you can kill us both, Vincent. You probably will. But you already lost. Because we're not afraid anymore." The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Vincent's face went blank, then twisted with something that looked almost like grief. "Fine." His voice was soft, deadly. "Then die together." He raised his gun, aiming at Lisa's heart. His men did the same, 6 weapons trained on 2 targets. Rocco moved on instinct, throwing himself in front of Lisa, his body a shield. He felt her hands on his back, felt her breath against his neck, and thought, this is how it ends. Together. Free. But the shots didn't come from Vincent's men. They came from behind them, from the warehouse district, from figures emerging from the shadows with military precision. 10 men, maybe 12, all armed, all wearing the wrong colors. Not Vincent's family, someone else's. The Delgado family, Vincent's oldest rivals, the ones who'd been waiting years for an opening. Vincent's face went pale as he realized what was happening. His attempt to execute a traitor in private had drawn competitors like sharks to blood. The Delgados had been watching, waiting, and now they were making their move. Vincent Carlino. The voice belonged to a man in his 50s, gray-haired and hard-eyed, stepping forward with the confidence of someone who'd waited a long time for this moment. "You've gotten sloppy in your old age, leaving your territory exposed, bringing your men here, focusing on a woman instead of business." He smiled coldly. "Your father would be ashamed." Vincent's gun swung toward the newcomers, and his men did the same. The pier became a 3-way standoff. Vincent's 6 against the Delgados, 12 against Rocco, and Lisa's 2. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then chaos erupted. Someone fired. Rocco never knew who, and suddenly everyone was shooting. Vincent's men, the Delgados, bullets flying in every direction. Rocco grabbed Lisa and dragged her off the pier into the water, the cold shock of the East River stealing his breath. They went under. Deep. The sounds of gunfire became muffled, distant. Lisa's hand found his in the darkness, gripping tight. They surfaced 20 yards away, gasping, swimming toward the Manhattan side, where boats were moored and escape was possible. Behind them, the gunfire continued. Rocco didn't look back. Didn't need to. Vincent was either dead or soon would be. The Delgados had come for blood, and they had the numbers to get it. Rocco and Lisa pulled themselves onto a dock on the Manhattan side, collapsing on wet wood, coughing up river water. The sounds from the Brooklyn pier were fading now, sporadic shots, then silence. Then sirens in the distance. Police, fire. Too late to matter. Lisa rolled onto her back, staring up at the pre-dawn sky, and started laughing. Hysterical, exhausted, alive laughter. "We're not dead." "We're not dead," Rocco confirmed, his own laughter mixing with hers. His ribs screamed with pain, his chest ached from the Kevlar impacts, but he was alive. They were alive. Lisa turned her head to look at him, her wet hair plastered to her face, mascara running, dress destroyed. She'd never looked more beautiful. "What now?" Rocco reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together like he'd done in the Charger hours ago. "Now we disappear. Now we be free. Now we figure out who we are when we're not his." "Together?" Lisa's voice was small, hopeful. "Together," Rocco confirmed. He pulled her close, kissing her with bruised lips and river water, and the taste of survival. "I'm yours. Remember, you won the game." "We both won," Lisa corrected, her smile finally reaching her eyes. Real, genuine, free. They stayed on that dock for another 10 minutes, watching the sunrise paint the Manhattan skyline gold and pink. Then they stood, supporting each other, and walked away from the East River, away from Vincent, away from 7 years of servitude and 2 years of captivity, away from everything they'd been, toward everything they could become. 3 days later, Rocco stood at the edge of the George Washington Bridge, watching the sun set over the Hudson River. The news had confirmed it. Vincent Carlino was dead, killed in what the media was calling a territorial dispute between rival families. The Delgados were claiming his territory, his businesses, his empire. The Carlino family was scattered, leaderless, dissolving into history. Rocco's phone, a new burner, untraceable, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Just 2 words. "You ready?" He turned and saw Lisa walking toward him from the parking lot. She'd cut her hair short, dyed it dark brown, traded designer dresses for jeans and a leather jacket. She looked nothing like Vincent's prisoner. She looked like herself. "Where are we going?" she asked as she reached him, her hand sliding into his like it belonged there. "West." Rocco squeezed her fingers. "California, maybe. Somewhere Vincent's name means nothing. Somewhere we can start over." "Start over." Lisa tested the words, smiling. "As who?" "I don't know yet." Rocco pulled her close, his other hand coming up to touch her face. "But we've got the rest of our lives to figure it out." Behind them, the city that had caged them both for so long stretched into the distance, Manhattan's skyline glittering in the fading light. Millions of lives lived in those towers, most of them free, most of them choosing their own paths. Rocco and Lisa were finally joining them. "I'm scared," Lisa admitted, her blue-gray eyes searching his, "of the future, of not knowing what comes next." "Good." Rocco's smile was genuine for the first time in years. "Fear means we're alive, means we're free." He kissed her forehead, then her lips. "We're free now, Lisa. Both of us." They walked back to the car together, not the Charger, that was gone, but a used Honda Civic bought with cash. Anonymous. Invisible. Perfect. Rocco opened the passenger door for Lisa, and she paused before getting in. "Take me anywhere." Her voice was steady. "Sure. Just don't let me go." "Never," Rocco promised. "I'm yours. Remember?" "And I'm yours." Lisa smiled. No longer sad, no longer broken, just free. Forever. They drove west as the sun disappeared behind the horizon, leaving New York City and Vincent Carlino and 7 years of servitude in the rearview mirror. The road ahead was uncertain, dangerous, unknown, but they were together. They were alive. They were free. And that was everything.